What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Manny Maradiege. After a long break for Thanksgiving and everything, we got to watch some football games. We got to watch more of the games over this past weekend. Now, we're back here on the new month of December, here December the 2nd, to recap everything that we've seen over this weekend, as well as the games on Thursday and Friday. So we're going to go over a few of that, the Thanksgiving games in a quick synopsis later in the show, but also the games mainly that we saw yesterday with the Eagles defeating the Baltimore Ravens, then also the Bills dominating the San Francisco 49ers, plus a couple more pieces of news that we didn't get to, obviously, because of the break. All of that is coming up on today's show, so make sure to stick around, but also not only to just watch the show and watch what we talk about. Also, you have an opportunity to get involved with the show. If you want to get involved and share any questions, thoughts, or just any opinions you have on anything that you have in mind or anything we say on these shows, please don't hesitate to do so. Your input is a big part of what makes this show great, and we thrive on your energy and insights. Now, if you want to make it absolutely sure that your message, whatever it may be, question, comment, opinion, stands out and gets featured on the show, there's an easy way to do that. Just use the new Super Chat feature. Just by clicking the $sign at the bottom of the chat box, you're able to send in your Super Chat, and this way, it guarantees that your message gets on the air, and it's also a fantastic way to support our channel. So go ahead and let us know what you're thinking. Hit the Super Chat button, and let's keep this show as interactive and as exciting as possible. With things getting in the thick of it now in the NFL, there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot of high stakes and everything like that. So again, if you want to make your voice heard, please use the new Super Chat feature. Click the $sign at the bottom of the chat box and get involved with the show. But now that we've had a lot of football go on over this past weekend, elongated break here, we're going to start off with what we saw in the prime time, the premier game yesterday on CBS there, with the Eagles taking on the Baltimore Ravens. In the end, the Philadelphia Eagles did enough to outlast the Baltimore Ravens as the Eagles held on to win 24-19, and that now allows the Eagles to push up to 10-2 as an overall record as they try to keep up with the Detroit Lions. Just right there trying to fight for that number one seed. They're only still a game behind, so they are trying to keep pace with the Lions and also trying to stay away from the Washington Commanders after they got a win this past weekend as well. The Eagles got to make sure, not to take it for granted and keep that healthy distance away from the Commanders as well, also because they still got to play one more time in a few weeks. But this victory is the Eagles' 8th win in a row since that loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and coming off of their bye week. They've not missed a step. They've just won all these games. They've gotten harder as we've gotten closer to where we are now, but it's a very beneficial and it's a huge merit to the Eagles for what they've been able to do now and how it just looks like they keep getting better and better, obviously being led by Saquon. On the other side of things, though, the Ravens now go to 8-5, losing 2 of their last 3 games to teams in Pennsylvania in pretty close contests with both of those teams, but also with the loss, the Baltimore Ravens drop back down to the 6th seed, and the Los Angeles Chargers move up 1 spot after they beat the Atlanta Falcons, and they just have a better record now over the Baltimore Ravens. So the Chargers are now the 5th seed, and the Ravens are back to the number 6 seed as well. But we can't go too far really diving into this game without, I think, mentioning one of the biggest pieces from this game, obviously now in hindsight, was the kicking game. Something that we hardly ever talk about, really. And that's the thing with kickers and defensive linemen, offensive linemen. When you're doing your job and when you're doing like a very good job and everything's going well, you're not really ever given the credit, or the spotlight isn't really on you. You're just doing your job, going about it, and nobody really gives you any credit. But that's the life of a lineman or of a kicker or anybody like this, right? You don't really get to notice them until things go drastically wrong, and it seems like things are turning that way for Justin Tucker and the Baltimore Ravens, because the game yesterday we saw a lot more of the mishaps that happened following Justin Tucker throughout 2024. Yesterday, looking at the kind of misses that he had 3 total misses yesterday, 2 field goals and 1 extra point, all missed yesterday, obviously totaling up to 7 points. And if things play out exactly the same, you look at the score, only a 5-point loss, probably they'd be in a better spot, at least you could say, to win this game potentially if Justin Tucker only misses 1 or doesn't miss any. Obviously, the Ravens would have had a better shot in this game. And that's in hindsight, right? You never really know how things play out, but it is something to take notice of, because Tucker overall this year has missed a total of 10 kicks. He's missed 8 field goals and 2 extra points now. He's 70% from field goal for a field goal. That's his percentage on making the field goals at this point in time. And if you look at all those misses, right, the 8 missed kicks, 8 times 3, 24 points, and then the extra points as well. That's 26 additional points that the Ravens could have had if Justin Tucker was, perfect in all those kicks. But even, if you cut it down a little bit, 26 points is a lot to leave on the table, especially in a lot of these close games. You look at the Steelers game, they only lost by 2 points. You look at this game against the Ravens as well. The Raiders game, if I'm not mistaken, was pretty close too. So all those things, now you start looking at them, and it doesn't look great. From 50 plus so far this season, he's only 4 of 9, and he's 5 of 8 from 40 to 49 range, where you always used to talk about Justin Tucker in a light where you're talking about 55 plus, 60 plus. You're looking at the only guy that could make it, probably Justin Tucker, and now it really hasn't turned out that way this season, unfortunately. But I don't think the Ravens are gonna, just abandon ship or anything like that, at least not according to John Harbaugh. But I think it is something to have a conversation about, at least, because when you're talking about close games, when you're talking about, like the games with the Chiefs and all the close games they win, right? They're not suffering from missed kicks, obviously, like that with Harrison Butker. So could you imagine if maybe they had some kicking problems like that, where they would be in terms of records? It usually makes a difference. And when we're talking about the playoffs and things like that, you want to feel good getting over that 40-yard line, thinking and knowing that your kicker's going to make it. So it is something that is interesting going forward for the Ravens. But overall in this game, it just wasn't about the kicking game, right? Anthony Manzano, welcome to the show. Do you think fans overreact when they see an opponent plant their flag in the middle of the home field? Because I feel fans overreact. It's not the opponent's fault that you couldn't defend your own home field and get blown out like you did and allow them to plant the flag in the middle of the field. I 100% agree with that. There were so many of them while I was watching college football or watching the highlights. Like 5 or 6 different games ended the same way, with somebody planting the flag and just a fight breaking out. But I mean, yeah, I completely agree. I think that if you don't want that to happen, just win the game, right? And it's obviously easier said than done, but if you don't want the other team to feel great after beating you on your own home field or something like that, just play better and really, I guess, in a way, care about it more, so you try to avoid that at all costs, right? You'll literally do anything rather than seeing something like that happen. And I think people do overreact to it. I don't think it should be banned or anything like that. I think that's going a bit too far. But I mean, yeah, it's part of the rivalry. It's part of what makes the games more intense, more fun to watch. And when you do see something like that, obviously you don't want to see fights and people getting hurt at the end of the day. But yeah, I mean, that's what it elicits. And I think it's good for the sport, honestly. It's good for college football in a time where I think a lot of people will say that fans and organizations and programs aren't really loyal anymore. People will just go there for a season and then just leave and not really care about it. At least it kind of shows you that some people do care about it. But yeah, I do agree that it's a bit of an overreaction to kind of freak out about it like that. I don't have a problem with it. And again, just settle it on the field, right? If you don't want that to happen, don't get embarrassed on your home field, is the way I see it. But that is a good question. I did see a lot of it, and the reactions were a bit of an overreaction. But sticking with this game, the game kind of played out in a defensive manner. And the biggest thing I wanted to highlight here with that was the fact that, I mean, you look at the numbers that Lamar posted, not bad numbers really, but the thing that I just kept kind of noticing about Lamar in this game was that a lot of the times he would hold the ball for like maybe over an amount of time that he should. And I don't think he has a problem with holding the ball too long. I just think that there was a lot of indecisiveness that I saw from Lamar, and with him scrambling a lot, it almost looked like he wanted to run. And then afterwards, after the game, he mentioned how there was a lot of developing routes that he was just kind of waiting for to kind of, just play itself out. And that's why he didn't, run too much. And he kind of made it pretty funny afterwards when he said that his mom kind of called him out on it. But I think there's a lot of truth in that. I think it's always like an internal battle, I guess, with Lamar, with overrunning too much, just putting your head down and running, or waiting for those routes to develop. But then also, you might be holding it too long, and the indecisiveness there isn't really beneficial. So I feel like I saw a lot of that where he was trying to keep plays alive, waiting for those routes to develop, but also just not really being 100% on running. Do I hold it? Do I try to force this throw? There was a lot of throws that he did miss as well, which aren't great, but I think it's a lot of credit to the Eagles as well. Their defensive line was awesome yesterday. Just the front four, the fact that they didn't have to bring in more bodies in to kind of stop Derrick Henry, they were able to keep everything in front of them, play too high, basically the entire game, and just have Lamar and the Ravens offense just have these long, drawn out, drives, and it's hard to sustain for as good as the Ravens are to continually, put out there like 7, 8, 10 play drives. It's hard to do that all game and score touchdowns off of it. So the fact that their defensive line was so good and able to just bring pressure and stop Derrick Henry just on their own, I think it's a big testament to what the Eagles are doing. All those guys are benefiting off of it, and it makes it easier on the secondary and vice versa. If the secondary is playing well, those guys can get to Lamar and just throw all the timing off. So there was a bit there from the Ravens, from their own wrongdoing, but I think if I were to side with something, I would say that the Eagles, I think, impressed me more than maybe the Ravens disappointed me with losing at home, especially to an NFC team, because this is only the second time Lamar has lost to an NFC team. The only other team was the Giants, and funny enough, Saquon was on both of those teams, right, yesterday and with the Giants. So, it is definitely something you don't want to see, for as impressive as that record was. But, the Eagles, I think, more so impressed me than maybe the Ravens disappointed me in this game, because it feels like it's always the same thing with the Ravens. Like you know what's going to happen with how to kind of stop them, right? You just keep Lamar in there, try to prevent him from throwing, stuff like that. I think all that sort of stuff is already out there. You see the Steelers do it, the Eagles do it, the Chiefs do it. The blueprint is out there. So for the Eagles to come in here, execute it, and then also best a pretty decent defense, I think it has a lot of credit to them as well. So they get a big win, they continue their win streak, and now the Ravens kind of try and regroup and get things, a little bit under control as they get going for the rest of the season. But we are going to go to a break right now, and when we return, we're going to talk about some Sunday night football. The Bills clinched the AFC East title while destroying the San Francisco 49ers along the way. What did we learn from it? What was the biggest surprise? And is Josh Allen officially the MVP of the season? We're going to get into all of that when we return now after this break.